this computer.
Yay!
Thank you.
Sorry that took so long. It's my computer. My fault.
No, it's fine.
She's good. Okay.
Sorry about all that. We're gonna be on for only 30 minutes here, and I planned for that just because of all this delay stuff.
That's okay.
Yep. So, give me just a sec. I'm gonna share my screen now.
Oh, and Aubrey said they're grabbing food, so I'll just send her the recording.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Can you see this all right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So, just to recap, I'm just gonna go through, we're not gonna do too much today. Again, we didn't really need too much time for today anyway, which is why the 30-minute session is totally fine. We're just gonna continue through the circle of fifths. So, right about here, this is where we left off. So first, do you still have your piece of paper that we began last week?
All right. Yep, right here.
Awesome. All right. Well, mine is, I know where mine is, but I'm going to walk us through how to relate to your minor keys today. So I'm sorry for all that delay stuff. It's okay. We'll take this as more of a chill day just because technology is crazy. And for our minor keys, I do want to explain exactly how they are related, which is why I'm going to go grab one thing. We're not going to do anything with the piano just yet. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I think next week I was going to introduce all of this and put it together with how it's related to the keyboard instrument, or, you know, all that fun stuff. So, speaking of which, just while we were talking about, yeah, okay, on here I put a grading discussion last year. This is like our grading discussion, even though I'm not grading anything for you all. We're not having actual assignments. So for next week, I understand it's our spring break, St. Patty's, all that. And if you all aren't doing anything on Friday, I was actually going to move class to next week. And originally, I planned to take a week off during spring break, but I'd like to actually add another week, or not add another week. I'd just like to move the week that we have at the end, where it's the second week of April, or technically the third week of April. I just want to move that everything down. So we can get through the class sooner. That way, you know, March, April, May, these are really tough months. Yeah. And like testing and all that. I don't want this to happen to be an extra thing that you have to do or whatever. So
all I know is that I have a week off, so I'm gonna be gone for, I think it's 3 or 4 days, like at the end of the week.
Oh, nice.
Through.
Awesome.
I don't know when, but yeah, so so you're saying you want to move the next class a week later?
So actually,
break.
Like normally we wouldn't have a week, or normally we wouldn't have a class next week, the Friday from today, but I do want to put a class there, and then whatever we had left over in April, we'll just chop one of those days. That way it's still 6 weeks. So I just kind of wanted to move it down a little bit. And I'm going to send that out in the email. So we just sent the first two recordings. We wanted to get all that together and then send it in at the same time, sort of. And then we'll get these next two recordings, or this one, we'll send this in. And in one of those emails, I'll post that we're gonna rearrange some dates. So checking out the calendar, let me go grab one thing, okay? But really quick, as I'm gone for just a second, you can totally look over this, and then we'll go through some of our patterns. Just 2 seconds. All right, let's do this. So in the chat, I will post some dates. Next week, we will add a class, and then the last week we would have had class, I'm going to chop off. So basically, just getting comfy for music theory. Basically, we will have class 18th, 25th, 1st of April, and then we're not going to have it on the 8th. And we're not going to have it on the 15th because I took that week off. So April 1st will be our last week, I'm pretty sure. Hold on. Let me just double check. So we had 1, 2, 3. Yes, okay. So the 1st is our last date. Actually, I'm not going to post that in the chat. I'll send it to you all in an email as well. So let's jump in here. So I'm going to grab a piece of paper in front of me. And on this, I do want to show you one thing. So, I'm going to grab my piano. All right. I'll show you this piano. Okay. And just as I'm getting situated here, I have not mentioned this yet. I know last year at the beginning, I definitely mentioned it. I was like, oh, we're going to have some fun, blah, blah, blah. But for this class, you guys, I don't care if you eat or if you're lying down or anything to where you're overly comfortable. I want you all to be comfortable. Just have fun with this. So that's why I have my blanket here. I found my piano mint box. Okay, so it helps if you have just a tiny piano in front of you. Oh yeah, my mother's laughing. So we bought this at a state achievement a couple of years ago. Yeah, you remember? Yeah, piano mint tins. And it's easier if you have something like this in front of you. So speaking of your music theory test, which again, Colin, I can offer that to you separately outside of the achievement. For the test, it helps if you really draw a piano on your own. So memorize exactly how a piano is drawn. Okay, we're going to memorize, you have your 2 black keys here. Understand that middle C, or any C for that matter, just the middle one on the piano specifically. Any C right here is the white key before these 2 black keys. Okay, and then you have 3 black keys. So in this case, 2 black keys, then it's continuing down 3 black keys, 2 black keys, 3 black keys. The key right in front of the 2 is C. And understand that your black keys on the piano represent your sharps and your flats. So any white keys are natural notes. Now, you do also have something called an enharmonic. And so there are so many enharmonics on the piano. I couldn't tell you how many. And we'll go over that pretty soon. But here, this is exactly what I was talking about. So my middle C is, again, the middle C on the piano. And say, just as an example, any violists who are watching this should pretty well understand that they have a nice clef in between treble clef and bass clef on the grand staff. It's pretty awesome to understand exactly how you have a certain alignment as well as the alignment with the piano staff. So here, like in treble clef, everything's mostly up here. Okay, bass clef, everything's mostly down here. And then they meet in the middle, and alto clef is normally between. So just like in the violin section, in the cello section, in an orchestra, alto is mixing them or bringing them together. Because, and it all goes back, like music theory goes back to, what is it, like the reality of the instruments, just the physical instruments. Like it's amazing how you have so many different relations in here and they all come together so you can understand exactly where middle C is. So in this case, it's about, or it should be about in the middle here. So the middle line of alto clef is C. And if you recall checking out these slides, the one that my cursor's on, here and here. We talked about deeply just a little bit more into the specifics of each instrument. So C through C, this is your C major scale. And what we would have, oh, and I wrote a note here. So the staff notation, whenever, oh yeah, this is just how you notate. So whenever the note head fully covers the appropriate space, then it is appropriately placed on the staff. All right. So if it's on a line, you have to make sure, just like in this musical example, you have to make sure that it doesn't exceed the space to touch another line above or below. So make sure it's not too big, make sure it's not too small. Everything is very exact and, just down to the point. And here in a space, make sure it doesn't exceed the line above or below. So if it's in a space, it's in its one space. Make sure it doesn't touch any other spaces. If it's on a line, it doesn't touch the other lines. So there you go. Now, speaking of your ledger lines, I do want to reintroduce you to one thing. So your ledger lines here, in this case, I only wrote, this being the line staff, or the staff representing the lines, I wrote in the ledger lines that you have B and D at the bottom here. So say if this is G, or I'm sorry, this is F, all the way down here. I'm gonna follow my F line. I have F, and then one below F is E, and now I have my D. I have C, and then B. Now, my upper ledger lines, okay, notice if this is 2 below, this is 1 above. So I have B as the upper ledger line, and then I have the very same thing, for example, in treble clef. I'd have A down here, and then I have A up here. So if that helps you out, just pondering about your ledger lines, then that is a certain pattern to recall. Okay. With that, I'm able to understand if this is my ledger line, I have a space above my first ledger line, my first upper ledger line, excuse me. And so this is C as well. This is basically, around where the treble clef staff would meet. So again, we talked about our grand staff. You have treble clef, and then you have bass clef. Everything, that C that meets in the middle, I'm predicting that's probably somewhere around this C. So again, it's all relative. Now, speaking of that, we've determined our C. What I'd like to go back through, since we're talking all about C here, is back to the C major scale. So in the key of C major, let us determine our scale here. We have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And what sharps or what flats do we have? Think about it.
None.
None. So everything is natural. And that's exactly why on some circles of fifths, circles of fifths, wow, plural, they make a little note up here, everything's natural. So even though normally we'd say no sharps, no flats, up here, everything's natural. So if these are all natural notes, and I understand that on the piano, my white keys are my natural notes, then notice we're not going to exceed the keys, okay, in order to reach any black keys here. So my C major scale will go from my first C all the way down to my last C. With that, let's find C. So I want to find my relative minor key to C, and this is exactly what I talked about earlier. It's just better to have kind of like a precursor, if you will. So I'll wait just a sec. So down here,
Never mind.
all right. Is it better now?
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry.
Awesome. No, you're good. You are good. So I don't know why I wrote this, but right here is our pattern. So recognizing a pattern for our whole steps and half steps, we have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, okay? And I'm just gonna throw it at you all. Just kind of understand where it is. You really do need to memorize it because there's not a lot of patterns unless you understand exactly how to look for the patterns on the piano. So memorize whole, whole, half. So 2 wholes and a half. And then you have whole, 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 half. And one easy way while relating it to the piano is we have 2 black keys. So that's whole, whole. And then we have an absence of a black key. We'll say this is our half step. And then whole, 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 half. So again, they're relative to the 2 black keys. What I mean here is whenever I'm writing my C major scale, I'll write this out, C, D, E. These are my first 3 notes. Beginning from C, I have C, here's my D, and here's my E. Now, if it's a W, again, it's representing whole. If this is a whole step, I must understand that I'm going to skip a black key. So normally if it's a whole step, you're gonna skip something. If it's a half step, you don't have anything to skip. So say if I were to perform a half step here, I'd go from my C to a C sharp. That's exactly what the black key after C is. So it's my sharpened note. If I were referring down from my D or descending, this would be my D flat. So speaking upon what I mentioned earlier about your enharmonic notes, C sharp is relative to D flat in the sense that they are the same note, same pitch, same position, whatever, if you will, except they do have 2 different names. So that's what an enharmonic is. And I don't know if I have that written. I think I will just try to edit this. So enharmonic, this is exactly how you spell that. Enharmonic with an E. All right. Awesome. So, oh, I don't need to edit that. Okay. Now, there's a lot of info going on here. So stay with me for just a second, guys. My C, D, E, I just went through my first 3 notes. So if I write C, I have my D, E, how I got there, it was my whole step from 1 in a major key, because we're talking about C major, right? In 1 note here, this is a whole step. So skipping my black key, whole step. And sometimes we like to draw a V, like upside down. So here to here to here, if you're following my cursor, and then here to here to here. Those are my first 2 whole steps. Whole, whole. Now I'm on my half step. So understand that if you don't have anything between, this is a half step. That's how you're able to recognize the pattern on a piano, because, or on your keyboard or whatever piano, just because you're not skipping anything here. So if it's a half step, again, just like relating it to from C to C sharp, or a half step down, D to D flat, you'll continue in halves. Now, here, determining my next note, I have F, right? Everything is natural, so I'm gonna write my last notes here. I have F, this is another whole step, so whole, 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 and then a half step back to my C. That is exactly how we will recognize this pattern. So in any major key, which we've gone over the circle of fifths, so now you're able to identify major keys, what sharps or flats they have, where they are on the circle of fifths. They will all have this pattern here. So I'm gonna erase. All right, you understand it goes from C to C. So I'm gonna give you one more key to look at. And I don't want to make it too complicated at all. Just bear with me for a minute, okay? So, Colin, what's your favorite major key so far that we have on the circle?
Probably just D.
D is a good one. Nice choice. So in the key of D, you have two sharps, right? I understand that I have my C sharp. Oh,
F sharp C.
C does not come after E. D. Goodness, yeah. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, sharpening my seventh as we talked about last week. And then I'm coming back up to D. So there you go. There's some space. So where's my D on the piano? We're always going to relate to C. Just as we relate, like on any staff, as we relate to the middle line or refer to the middle line, we will always refer to the middle note here being C. And that's the middle line of a grand staff as well, just to let you guys know. That's also what I mentioned earlier. Grand staff, treble clef, bass clef, right in between is your C, which connects them. Anyway, it's just music theory is amazing. So here's my D. I'd actually like to begin an octave higher, if that's okay, just so this C natural doesn't confuse us, because again, this is a C sharp. So, oh dear. Okay. Let's begin an octave lower. Let's begin 2 octaves lower from here. So here's my D, just like how I'm identifying a C. C, first white key before these 2 black keys. Here's another C, okay? Something I have my piano students do is identify all the C's on whichever piano they're using at that time. It's actually really helpful so that they're aware of, you know, spacing issues, because we both try to use the piano and it's like, okay, let me move an octave up here, whatever. So it's fun. Again, piano is so much fun. So for our whole half, this is pretty amazing. I just want to go through. So what's our first step? Think about it. Are you beginning with a whole step or a half step? It's right here.
Oh.
Whole step. Excellent. So you'll begin from D to E, right? Here's my D. Here's my E. I don't want to edit. Okay. Here's my D. Here's my E. So I'm going to go 1 whole step up, beginning on your first note. Whole step up. There's my upside down V. Now I'm on E. And I have another whole step. I need to get to my F sharp. So understand right here, just as we talked about in C major, oh, this looks like a half step. Okay, I meant to mention that really only applies to C, because again, it's starting in your C major scale. So you're able to understand whole, half step here, whole, half. Okay, in this case, it's a little bit different because of the fact that you are using your sharps and flats. Any key besides C has at least 1 sharp or 1 flat. So here, whole, and our next whole step goes from E to F sharp. So technically 3 or 1 whole step equals 2 half steps, okay? E to F to F sharp. There's my second whole step. Is that making sense though? Awesome. All right. You're just a trooper, putting up with me and all my crazy like words, but yeah, I hope this all makes sense. So again, we're on our second whole step. We're going to move down to our half step. So we're going from F sharp to G. Again, it's a G natural, so my G is just right here. This is another half step right here, from F sharp to G, constantly sharpening in the scale as we're ascending. Yeah, sorry. I shouldn't have said that. If we're constantly sharpening, I just mean like, again, if you were to move up on a string on your instrument, for you to go all the way down to your bridge, you know, we'd come up to our bridge. You're sharpening up the scale, so just as on a string instrument, you'd go, woo, it's really fun. So that's your ascending scale without all the technical spacing issues. If you're flattening down, You're going, woo, all the way back down, descending. That's what I meant. So now we're on G. We just performed our 2 whole steps and 1 half step. So now we have 3 more whole steps. 1 whole step, 2 whole steps. Here's my 3rd whole step, just as we did earlier. And then my half step reaches back down to D. So this is exactly how our pattern makes sense. Now, are you having any trouble at all? You got it? You are good. So I understand I mentioned this earlier. We had to go through our step pattern. One extra thing. This is the big issue of today that I wanted to discuss. Determining relative minor keys, okay? So we have our major step pattern. Let's look at our minor step pattern and then let's relate. So you've got your whole half, you have all that down. In your minor scale pattern, although, you will have something just a little bit different. Everything is shifted, and you're going to recognize that whenever you relate these. It's okay if you're already looking at this. We're going to go through it, but this will help you determine prior to the whole process. We have a whole, half, whole, half, whole. Do not worry about memorizing that, although I will copy and paste this so we can have it on this page as well. Okay, so this is our minor. Oh dear. This is our major. All right, and another thing in music theory. So we do deal with a lot of we do deal with a lot of English-based things. So, or language-based, I mean. The capital letter represents major, so the capital M means major, and then the lowercase m means minor. So in this case, whenever I put lowercase m, this shows your minor your minor step pattern, okay? Now, determining the relative minor to C major takes just a couple of steps, and I might go over in class, that's fine. I hope that's okay with you. You can jump off if you need, but that's gonna be fine for me. I'm gonna have to accept that we're gonna move forward because we started late, so it's okay. But while you're determining, just understand a simple pattern. You have so many different patterns you could use from this, but the easiest one that I found is you're going to descend 3 half steps. Now, we just went through what whole steps and half steps are, so hold on to this info for a little bit. Okay, if it's a half step, it's only going from one key to another. I'm not going to skip any just because there's a black key right there or anything. Again, I'm descending down. So whenever we talk about major versus minor, major seems, pretty happy, positive, everything works together, but minor seems kind of sad or just not too great. Or maybe it's really fun, but it's more negative. So again, positive would be ascending, and you would ascend in order to find your major key from a relative minor key, and you will descend to find your relative minor key from a major key. So let's do this. Here's my C. Here's my C. Okay, and so I'm going to descend 3 half steps. Now we talked about a half step doesn't skip any keys at all. So this is 1, 2, 3, and I'm on A. So let's check it out here. We have 1, 2, 3 half steps down will determine your relative minor key to the major key you're currently on. We just studied C. So our relative minor key is A minor. Now, going through the A minor scale, I do want us to recognize the fact that, again, if it's a relative key, it will share the same number of sharps and flats as its relative major key. So A minor has 0 sharps and 0 flats, just like C major. Again, this is right where that natural sign came in. That's right where I was talking about. And I just love studying this because this is where everything like molds together in your brain, and you just really have to study it continually over years. So if you don't get it today, do not worry. You are absolutely perfectly fine just understanding a couple of things today because there's a lot of info in so little time. But I hope this helps. So for A minor, let us write out our A minor scale, okay? I'm going to keep everything lowercase just because, oops, that's how it will be written normally, like in your mind. It's more of a mental thing, understanding that everything is lowercase in a minor key. So just to help you out in the future reference, here we have our minor step pattern. Beginning with a whole step, you're going to go A to B. So this is your first, you could call it a, I don't really know, triangle, whatever, cone or something. So your first, I'll say your first V, even though it's upside down. All right. You have your whole step. Next, you already have a half step in here. All right. So now we're going from B to C. That's my half step. I'm not skipping anything. And then you have another whole step. All right. And another whole step. So now we're already halfway through our scale. Whole, half, whole, whole. Don't worry about memorizing this. I'll let you know that for the test, it's not that necessary to memorize. Okay. Now, we are already on E. I'll wait just a sec for internet issues. All right, so hopefully this makes sense. I'm going to begin from the beginning. Whole, half, whole, whole. Now I have another half step. And again, I told you, you can really only see it in C major or wherever you don't have any sharps or flats. Same thing with the relative minor key, which is A minor here. This is your half step. You can see it just because you go from one white key to the next. This is your half and whole and another whole step. And you're back to A. So understand, if it's just one thing today, please understand that whenever you use your piano, you're descending 3 half steps in order to find the relative minor key. You're ascending 3, yeah, did I say that right? Yeah, you're ascending 3 half steps in order to find the relative major key. And one extra pattern, because I mentioned before, there are so many multiple patterns. You could either use 3 half steps or a pattern of 6 half steps. So this is just where like the math of everything matches up. And if I were to descend 6 half steps, which let's try it. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold on. I don't really know. Maybe I said that wrong. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, maybe it was. No, it's sorry. Okay, whenever it doesn't matter actually.
What interval?
Well, no, we're talking about whenever you determine the major versus minor keys. You said something about you could either use 3 half steps or 6.
Oh, the 6th note of the major scale. So if you're on a key of
Oh,
C,
that's
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you're in a key of C, C, D, E, F, G, A is the relative minor. Or you can go C down, 3 half steps is A. It's the same answer, 2 different ways to get to the same answer.
she said it. So, okay, it's the 6th scale degree. And speaking of which, I'm actually glad you caught me on that. Thank you so much.
Oh, I was just walking by, but you guys are just delightful. I'm listening as you're doing your stuff. Very delightful. Hope everybody's having fun.
Yeah. So your 6th scale degree is law in solfege.
Yeah, and that's the relative minor of the major key.
Right. And I wrote down, so it's also known as the submediant. We'll go through that next week.
Exciting. Oh, I love these terms. I love the scale degree terms because they mean a lot. It's going to be really great getting to that next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So great.
So with that, hopefully, oh yeah, hopefully that all made sense. This is right where we were. I didn't show you this page yet, but next week we should be entering triads and intervals, all that fun stuff. So again, I will send that out in an email that we'll have a class next week. First, I want to ask you, did this make sense? Did you understand anything from this?
Most of it.
Most of it. That is amazing. So thank you so much for being here to just like tell me what's happening, because sometimes music theory, it just slips past you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, it's a lot of notes. If you needed to write anything down, again, you can go back through. I know I jump around and I ping pong between sayings. So whenever I say stuff like, oh, as I mentioned earlier, I meant to do that also. I meant to do that. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. And this has been a wonderful class. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Sorry about the technology craziness, but that's all right. All right, I'm gonna.
And you have 2 people joining next week.
Oh, good.
Probably 3 more people next week.
Awesome. Yay. All right, so he just left. I'm gonna jump off this recording. Thank you all so much. Hopefully some of that made sense. If not, again, it just takes years to study. I had to get everything like figured out just so, it's a lot to grasp onto. So I totally understand. Thank you all.